Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Becca Powers, who's here to share with us her new book, A Return to Radiance, the power method to ignite your soul and unleash your potential. So, do you ever feel like you've just lost your creative spark? Well, today's guest is here to share with us how to get that back. So Becca Powers is an author, Fortune 500 high-tech sales executive, keynote speaker, and CEO of Powers Peak Potential. She has worked with industry giants Cisco, Dell, Royal Caribbean International, and Office Depot. With an impressive record of leading large teams and hitting $500 million in annual revenue, Powers has earned the coveted President's Club Award 7 times. So welcome to the show, Becca Powers.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
It's a very good question. Two things really, but I'm going to settle on the first one that comes to mind. And that is I had a really unique childhood. I was born to parent musicians who played music full time. They were in a cover band in Indiana, and this is like late 1970s. They opened up for John, who is now John Mellencamp, but back then Johnny Cougar. So when I was growing up, I was around guitars and bongos and singing and dancing and happiness and all sorts of things. And so I call this now as an adult radiance, right? I grew up seeing people in their radiance. And then like as I got older, my parents got more settled into their careers. My dad was a civil engineer, my mom was a manager for a Starbucks, and over time they gave up playing their music, and very painfully I saw their light dim out. And unfortunately, the sadder part of my story is that both of my parents passed away way earlier than they should have. And I'm a firm believer that had they kept playing music and stayed in their radiance, that they would be alive and thriving today. So I do believe that there's a part of us, especially working professionals, that there's this call to return to our radiance, and that you can do both, have a career and whatever it is. It doesn't mean you have to be an Olympic gold medalist or a famous rock star, but there's something in you that needs to be expressed. It's all of us have a radiant gift. So that was my calling to write the book.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. Whenever we lose a parent, it doesn't matter how long it's been, that's never an easy thing.
Mm-mm. And it's caused a lot of deep reflection, but with everything that happens, there's always a gift in it. And I'm a firm believer of that. I talk a lot about that in the book too. But I think what the gift that I got was this perspective of, wow, as I've helped people return to their radiance, I see them be more present for their kids, more present for themselves. I see health health problems reverse themselves, more prosperity, not only just financially, but as far as overall abundance, how they feel, their deepness in relationships. So I've had an honor of kind of being on both sides of this fence, and now I feel that I basically want to call from rooftops like, "Hey, everybody, return to your radiance."
Well, and for those folks that maybe have forgotten what is our radiant self?
I like to describe it as the part of us that is centered in our strengths, our gifts, our talents, our passions, the things that we daydream about. For an example, I remember, I have my own struggle of falling out of my radiance. But I remember as a young kid, I used to always write. I have this book out now, but a writer is part of my DNA. I used to write short stories, song lyrics, poems. I didn't care what it was. I was just writing and creating, and then I would deliver them to my stuffed animals. I would stand up and speak, and I kind of joke about that, but that is an example of something that's very native to me and a part of my radiance. I tune that out, And when I needed to recover, I got very sick, an autoimmune disease from working myself into extreme burnout. And when I was recovering, I had to return to some of these essential things. And what ended up bringing me into a full thriving recovery was what I'm calling the radiance. It was me be honoring my gifts and talents, giving me space to work on them. And as I have been working in this theme of radiance, when I'm working with executives and high performers and leaders, that entrepreneurs that are going for it big, like anybody who really is just like full plate trust, I invite them to, I'm like, what's your gifts? What's your talents? What's your passion? When you're not working, what are you thinking about? And and it could be as simple as someone loving gardening or nature and not having a chance to be in it anymore. That could be an extension of the radiance. And so it's very unique to each person, but it's typically, again, somewhere in our obsessive thoughts or where we go to when we're not thinking of the stressful things.
In your book, you talk about the power method. I'd love for you to share that with our listeners.
Yes. So the power method is how, if is how I help someone rise into their radiance. And the P stands for protecting your potential. And this is a really cool concept because so many times we are not protecting our potential. We're emptying ourselves out. We're saying yes to everyone, everything. We don't have firm boundaries in place. We don't know how to fill our own cup. So this first part of the power method is all about doing those type of things. And then the O is owning your opportunities. And this is really heavy mindset work. This is even when I shared my opening story of losing my parents and saying that there's a gift in it. Like I am now helping other people with their journey and because of something horrible that happened to me. But that's kind of what happens. You can choose to own the opportunities that come your way, and you can choose to see things either as a victim or as a victor. And so the arc in this in the O is to kind of move from victim to victor by using your mindset and choose making different choices. The W is wake in your worthiness. I am a firm believer that we were inherently worthy. We just need to align back to that. So we are worthy of love, prosperity, joy, fulfillment, all of success, all of those wonderful things. We just need to align back to it. The E is for elevate your energy. I am also a Kundalini yoga teacher, and energy work is a very big part of returning back to your radiance. And even though I said like radiance is an extension of our gifts, it's really also just how you feel, your radiance. When, if you think, I always like saying, like, think of a little kid spinning, like a little girl spinning around in a field of flowers with the sun beaming on her and the dress spinning and maybe bubbles in there. It's kind of silly, but we know radiance when we see it. And so elevating your energy and is a way that you can go back to your radiant state. And then the R is rocking your radiance. So once you've kind of gone through all these little steps, you get to just shine in your own brilliance.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Like, that's so empowering. And it brings me to like the next step. I mean, you talk about burnout. Why was it important to start that as far like chapter one, burnout?
Yes, because I feel that working professionals are the ones that I see kind of mid to senior career the furthest away from the radiance. And when I started running surveys from my company, I started putting surveys out to working professionals. What I found was very congruent to other surveys by like Deloitte and other consulting firms like that. But that 69 to 77% of people are working professionals are either like in or very close to being in burnout. And that's a lot of people. So I feel like that's where we need to start. We need to start where it hurts and then learn how to understand it, identify it, prevent it. So I um I really geeked out and read and researched and then created my own framework to help people understand burnout quickly, which maybe even in just a few minutes. And so I created the pyramid of unpotential, which has 5 different levels of unpotential slash burnout for to help people understand it quickly.
So, what do people do when they're in this pattern of burnout, but life still happens? We still have bills to pay, we still have to go to work. I mean, what do we do then?
Yeah. So when I would love if I can to just talk to the listeners about the pyramid of unpotential, because this is a very practical piece that if you never pick up the book, which I hope you do, you can at least walk away from this thinking like I learned something that might be able to stay with you for the rest of your working career. And this is not just for work, this is for relationships. So we get burnt out in two places, our work at work and at home, or with our mainly with our families. So whichever however this relates to you, you can wear what either hat, or you can wear both, personal or professional or both. So, but I want to start people off in level 1, which I call the unders. So burnout starts in the unders. And this means feeling undervalued, underappreciated, underrecognized, maybe underpaid. If you can put the word under in front of it, those are the unders. And what happens from a psychology perspective is when we're feeling undered, we then overcompensate. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're at work and you've worked at a place for 5 years, and all of a sudden you applied for a position and you didn't get it, Sally got it, but Sally's only been there for a year. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like, how did this happen? I feel all sorts of feelings around this. I feel undervalued, underappreciated, underrecognized. And so now I'm going to show them that they made a mistake, right? And that's the psychology piece that happens. We overcompensate. So the natural reaction in a situation like that is people would start overworking, overstressing, overanalyzing, overwhelming. And so level 2 of unpotential is the overs. And if you're in the unders and the overs, especially as a high performer or a high achiever, it's pretty common that we come in and out of these. The goal here in me explaining it is that you can catch yourself. And how you're going to catch yourself is in the overs. If you find yourself overing, then you can ask yourself, why, how do I feel undered? And if you feel undered, then you can ask, like, who or where am I feeling these feelings? And you, with self-awareness, you can kind of break free of burnout cycles because you have more control over yourself and your choices. But let's just say, for an example, that you don't have awareness, that someone in the overs would then, if they didn't catch it, they would then go into level 3, which is questioning your belonging. Marianne, I don't, if you've ever been at work or in a relationship where you're like, should I stay or should I go? Like, that's an example of questioning belonging. Those are the type of questions you start to ask yourself. And then if you override that zone and you stay when you should go, you go into level 4, which is disharmony in the bodies. And this is where people really go into extreme burnout. Um, your body starts talking to you like body talk, and not a good way, like potentially like clenched jaw, um, shoulders hurting, stiff neck, digestive issues, migraines. All these are all symbols that there's something really out of alignment and you need to make changes. And unfortunately, if you don't, you can go into level 5, which is devastation of the D's. And this is when bigger things happen like divorce, debt, especially for women. We shop when we don't have control over our life. So I see a lot of women go into debt, but divorce, debt, disease. As I mentioned, I ended up getting autoimmune disease when I bypassed all these stages and got very sick. Um, Cancer is on a rise, autoimmune disease is on a rise. And then the very high end and devastational end, it would be death. And that was also on a rise within working professionals. So I feel that this framework is really important because, again, for you listeners, if you find yourself overing, go explore why you feel undered. And just right under that horizon, the seed that starts it all, I call the uns, is feeling unseen, unheard, unimportant, unloved, unwanted. And those are all human needs. So if you can peel back the layers and get to the what am I feeling? Then you can work to getting that need satisfied. That is the pyramid of unpotential to help people stay out of burnout.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Becca Powers in regards to her new book, A Return to Radiance: The Power Method to Ignite Your Soul and Unleash Your Potential. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Becca Powers, who's here to share with us her new book, A Return to Radiance: The Power Method to Ignite Your Soul and Unleash Your Potential. I was actually real impressed with how authentic you were and how many people experience this and go through this, is where we're so burnt out. And you share about how you had enough and you kind of snapped at your kids when you got home.
I
And,
did.
and it's I think everyone goes through that where it's okay, and for those that don't have kids, maybe they're snapping at their cat or dog or, partner, whoever it is, whoever's around. But it's, it's interesting. We get through these days where it's we just can't take one more thing.
Yes. Yes. And that is definitely what happened to me. And I see it happen to far too many people. So again, that was kind of my why write the book? This was my battle cry. I'm no more bathroom floors. So for me, audience, what happened to me is that night after I snapped at my kids, I ended up having an emotional collapse on the bathroom floor and didn't have the strength to stand back up. And I really had to go deep within and up, as I like to say. I called out to God, universe, whatever word you want to use for it, and just called out, I need to do tomorrow differently than I'm doing today. And I only know how to do tomorrow the same way I'm doing today. And as you mentioned, Marianne, like I had to go to work the next day. I didn't have, I wasn't about ready to take a 2-week backpacking sabbatical to Tibet, like I had to go back to my life the next day. So it was really important for me to find a solution to do the next day differently. And lucky for me, I got what I call my instant miracle. And I heard a whisper from within say, Becca, you're the CEO of your life. And audience, I'd like to invite you to embrace that message the same way I did, because that message, I'm the CEO of my life, really filled me with so much internal empowerment that I rose off the bathroom floor a different woman than the one that went down, and I vowed that I would never let myself get back to a bathroom floor, and that I would help other people not have bathroom floor moments. So that's why I wanted to share that story, but that also goes into kind of what you're saying, about me losing it on the kids and just what happens.
I think it's such a pivotal point that so many people can understand, but maybe they don't get that little whisper. And, taking 2 weeks and, backpacking in Tibet doesn't sound like a bad place to go, so it's on my list. So
Yes, mine too.
what are some things that you see with the people that you're working with? What are some of the things that are keeping them stuck?
I The first thing that I feel keeps them stuck is what I just refer to as societal standards. And I think most people think they're doing the right thing. It's just not the right thing for them. And what I mean by that is, most people are that I work with would be again mid to senior career. They've been doing it for a while. They have the kids, the house, the car, everything that was prescribed that they were supposed to have. And yet they feel unfulfilled. And yet they might be successful, but they're unhealthy, or they're successful and unhappy. There's this emptiness inside them. And it really comes from a life that was not designed for them, perhaps.
Well, that's pretty wise. That's a telltale sign right there.
Yes. Hmm.
I like how in your book you talk about boundaries. And for some people, they think of boundaries like, well, there's boundaries between the US and Canada. So when we talk about boundary setting,
That's funny.
I mean, some people just don't have. I actually have some really dear friends that don't have boundaries. They have no idea what those are. So, how do we start at this place where we can start developing good boundaries for ourselves and maybe not get too carried away?
I really like that you asked that question, because I think boundaries can be so much easier than what we think. And the first thing that I want to say about boundaries, which was a uh like a mind blown moment for me when I really, really got this, was that boundaries were never between me and anybody else. So listeners, that's what I would first say to you, is that the boundary is not between you and someone else. A boundary is between you and yourself. And that, when I got that, my whole life started to change, because the only boundary you can ever violate is the one that you set with yourself. And I want to give a little more color to that. What I mean is, you're the only one that can say yes to you and no to the things that don't serve you. And you can't control anybody else. So, before I fell to the bathroom floor, I mean, I remember, as a mom, especially, and as a wife, like, if you guys do this, then I'm going to do that. Or, almost using boundaries as a threat. But what I realized is that the boundary I violated mostly was saying yes to the kids, yes to the husband, yes to more projects at work, yes to friends, yes to my family. Yes, everything was a yes except for yes to me. And when I realized that saying yes to me might mean that I say no to taking on a project, or no to doing an extra task, again, that was really mind altering for me and very scary at first. But you know what? Everyone lived through it. It was great. and then I got my energy back. And so, what I would say to listeners as we're talking about boundaries, consider boundaries being something that serve you and support you and give you space and energy and time back. And the more you say yes to yourself, the bigger the smile gets on your face. And the last thing I want to say to that, and I'll turn it back to you, Marianne, is that, boundaries don't mean that you have to. I mean, sometimes we have to go to the wedding or to do something that maybe we don't really want to do. Maybe we kind of want to go to the wedding, but we kind of also had a really full week and we just like to sit on the couch on Saturday. Um, but the thing is that if you have to say yes to something that you know is going to drain your energy, I'd like to invite you to replenish your energy. Know that saying yes to something that's going to drain your energy means that you have to take the time to replenish that back. And maybe that's a timeout for yourself, or giving yourself 4 hours on Sunday instead, just to kind of be. There's so many different ways that you can go about that, and I don't want to keep talking about it, but I would like to invite you to say yes to yourself more.
I love that. I love that. Do you think that people sometimes all they're looking for into making these changes in their lives is the permission to do so?
Yes. Yes. I feel that, I kind of go back to just that societal standard is where, and it's nothing bad. It's just how we're grown up, and not even just how we're raised in our families, but then we go through school and work, and there's just this expectation of us to be kind or formidable or whatever it is. And so I have found that so many people didn't realize that they could give themselves permission to do these things. So I love that you said that, because then I just want to give the audience permission. You have permission to prioritize yourself.
Well, I think it's important when we do, especially when it comes to maybe looking at having dreams. Because I know so many people are like, God, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. And, reading your book just made me feel like, I think we just need they just need permission to say, yeah, go ahead, go for it.
Yes. And so chapter 5 of the book is permission to have super big, dreamy goals. And this kind of goes back to what radiance is. Like, radiance is an energy, it's not a thing. But when we are in our dreams, when we're dreaming and we're setting goals, our spark our spark increases, our inner spark increases, and our joy increases, our sense of wonder increases, our creativity increases. And so I love getting people back on the track of giving permission to dream and set goals. And I have seen people do little goals like, hey, I'm just going to go for a walk every morning before work. But that's a really big goal to them, and then they do it and they feel fantastic. And then I have seen those same people who couldn't even foresee themselves doing anything more than walking, like let alone running or having huge time commitments to working out, like start to train for triathlon 6 months later. So you don't always have to know what the outcome is going to be. I love saying shoot big. Like, for me, I still want to go, I want to become a New York Times bestselling author, not because the achievement means anything to me, but the fun in chasing that goal and writing the book that could get there and the lives that are changed in the process. Like, for me, it's the dream within the dream that gets me going and lights me up. So I always encourage people to set big goals, because the dream within the dream will light them up. However, it's also setting maybe small goals that just make you feel a little bit more sense of fulfillment in days where you're not receiving that.
So, what's a type of a small goal someone can set to kind of get used to, maybe developing bigger ones?
I love That's a good question. And what I love is habit stacking. And so for everyone, these goals can be different, but I love setting little goals that replenish you. So if it's reading a book, how I just gave an example of taking a walk, maybe it's writing or journaling for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but find something that I mean, at this stage in our lives, when we're in mid to senior career, we should have an idea of what makes us feel good, makes us maybe it's planning a vacation, and you don't have any time, but you spend 15 minutes a day planning this big family vacation that's ultimately going to happen in 2 or 3 years from now. I don't know. It could be anything like that. But I want to reference habit stacking because typically what I find is not people don't have a lack of ideas of dreaming or a lack of ideas of things they could be doing. It's more of running into the mental excuses of I don't have time or it's just not worth it. So what I suggest is find something, a routine in your life where you can add 15 minutes to. And for a lot of people, I'm like, when are you having coffee? When is that morning time? Can you add 15 minutes instead of looking at your phone and drinking your cup of coffee? Can you do something that fills you up? Can you take that walk? Can you plan 15 minutes of your vacation? Can you read that book? Like whatever it is, can you find 15 minutes to start? And maybe if it's not coffee, maybe it's when you first log off your lunch break, can you give 15 minutes back to yourself, to your dreams, to your passions? And so that's where I reference starting because habit stacking is the most successful way to start something when you haven't started yet.
I love how in your book you have power up your practice and for
Yes.
people to make new moves. And I think they're so important. And one of the ones that really stuck with me, we talked about starting small, but also be flexible. How does
Yeah.
that relate to all of this?
Well, it's funny because the audience didn't get to be a part of this, but before we went live, we started. I said a comment: "Life is lifing," and life is always going to life. You might think you're going to have control over a day or a moment or a meeting, and then something happens out of your control, and so instead of getting mad or upset when things don't go right, which, you can't be perfect at that. There's tons of situations where it's warranted. I'd like to invite you to consider that life is going to life and things are going to happen that are not in your control. So, what if instead you went about life with a little bit more flexibility? And in that flexibility might give you more ease and less stress. So I love that you brought up flexibility.
You have so many great points within your book. And one of them I'd love for you to share with us is grandma's mustard seed.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. So I remember when I was a young girl, I was about 5 or so, and my grandma put a mustard seed in my hand. And I share the full story in the book, but the sum of it was that she was trying to tell me that all I needed really was faith the size of a mustard seed. And that wasn't just faith in universe or God. She made it very clear that this was also faith in myself. And that was very formidable for me growing up. And I am just such a big advocate of inviting that space of faith, and sometimes all you need is faith the size of a mustard seed. We go around, walking, and we have faith that gravity is going to work, but why don't we have faith in ourselves to learn or to grow or to be the best versions of ourselves? Why do we beat ourselves up when we could have faith that we just know that we're resilient and we're going to get through it, or that we could have faith that things are going to work out versus faith in that things are always going to go wrong. So I really just come back to that mustard seed all the time and just say, when things are going wrong, I'm like, I just need to have a little bit of faith. And so again, I love to just invite the listeners to think about that and how faith in yourself might be able to help you alter your course a little bit and be a little kinder to yourself.
Well, what a great experience that was to have something so small placed in your hand that it leaves such an impact.
Oh my god, I get the goosebumps as you're saying it back to me. I will never forget it.
I can see why. I can definitely see why. And do you think that most people that's a kind of a struggling point with them for just moving forward is faith just in themselves?
I do. I think that as we get stuck in mediocrity, I think that faith in just everything kind of goes. Faith in ourselves, faith in things working out, faith in our dreams coming true. I think that faith, a lot of people might still have faith in God or the universe, but faith outside of that, like in the things that I just suggested, seems to diminish. And that is one thing I want to like have people reconsider, is that maybe faith in other things might lighten your load, lift you up, make you shine brighter.
We can all use a little bit of that, this a little bit of not only faith, but another thing that you touch on in your book, which I was real impressed with, is embracing change as positive. I mean, there are so many people now going through change in one way or another. How often do we look at that as a very negative thing, as opposed to something that could be a benefit for us?
Yes. I'm really happy that you brought that up, because one thing that I have learned, I say sometimes I've had a badge of tragic things that have happened, but through it, I've learned so many things. Like outside of losing my parents, I've also lost my brother, so I'm the sole survivor of my family. I have been divorced. I've been through 2 layoffs. I mean, I had autoimmune disease and was almost hospitalized. I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed. My hair was falling out in clumps. I could go on and on and on. And change for me felt very scary until I learned to embrace it and realize that even through some of the big, scary changes, also came some of my biggest growth. And I know that the human spirit is so much more powerful and resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And that if you can embrace change as a positive and find the gift in the things that you've been through. And I'm going to give a quick example, if that's okay. I was recently speaking at a women's conference, and we were doing a table topic session where it was about 10, 12 women, and we were taught, the theme was elevating impact, turn your strengths to superpowers. And what we were talking about were obstacles that all the women had overcome, which started off a little heavy, but then we turned it into, well, what strengths have you found as a result of that thing that changed your life? And then they started thinking like, oh my gosh, I have this. I'm fierce. I'm resilient. I am nimble. Like there was a whole bunch of different responses that came out, and then all of a sudden they realized that through this thing that they have, through these changes that they had went through that seemed so scary, they are now this more empowered person. And that in fact, not only are they more empowered from this thing that they went through, but the reason the title of the topic was elevating impact is that they found that they were helping other people who to go through the same thing that they went through. So I share this version of these stories because change is something that can be embraced as a positive and have true impact on the other side of it.
We need that more than I can say. I mean, goodness, your book is coming at such a great time when
Thank you.
people, yeah. So, I mean, I think people just need to have this type of information so that they can look at life differently. What are a couple things that you would like to share with our listeners that they could start making like real impactful changes in their life right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing that I always like to start off is the basics. We make choices thousands of times a day, micro choices, big choices. And if you start making more choices that serve you, life does start working for you rather than against you. And so I call it, I call a lot of things the power of. I have like the power of and the power of choice, but choice has two paths. Our choices either serve us or they sabotage us. And I know sometimes choices feel so much more complicated than that. And I'm not taking that away, but I can tell you that when you strip it all down, choice has two paths. Our choices serve us, help us, or empower us, or they sabotage, hurt us, or disempower us. So as you are making choices, try to be more conscious about them. That's a real practical thing that you can do every single day. The other thing you can do to start shifting your mindset is pause to breathe. Breathing is, I talk about breath work a lot in the book, but breathing is underrated. It's just something kind of like gravity. We just expect it to happen. We have faith that it's happening. We don't even think about it. But our breath gives us access to our radiance. It gives us access to our inner knowing. It gives us access to energy when we feel depleted. So even just taking a few mindful deep breaths in through your nose and then out through your mouth, a 3 or 4 cycle like that, or another one that I share in the Power Up Your Practice. I do believe it's in chapter 1. Is square breathing, really known to reset your nervous system and help you recalibrate. It's used a lot by military PTSD um, survivors and things like that, but it's a 4 count. It's a 4 count breath, meaning you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then hold again for 4. If you do a couple cycles of that, you'll come back into yourself. And again, that's another practical tip. So choice, breath, and then, the other thing that I would say um, is another practical thing that you can do is not everyone has time to do the gratitude journal. I mean, that's pretty commonly shared. Everyone start your morning with a gratitude journal, which I do agree with. However, there is a vibration that happens, an energetic vibration that happens for the emotion of gratitude that elevates you, that helps you shift your mindset. And so this is a mindset hack, even though it is something that is really like I would also say can be deeply spiritual, but it is a mindset hack. So when you find yourself racing, your mind racing, or you feel a little out of control, I would definitely, use your breath, consider your choices, but then shift your mindset to what you feel grateful for or thankful for. What can you appreciate about yourself? Even if you just go through 2 or 3 things, the combination of all of those tips can really reset your mindset and get you back in a direction that is going to support you and help you thrive.
I love that. Thank you for taking the time to share those. Those are just,
Welcome.
I think they're very practical and easy for people to start using right now. One of the things in your book that I was really surprised about, you talk about a Pew Research study that talks about how 64% of adults spend their time doing an inward kind of reflection. And I was really shocked by that we have that many people who are really looking at their life internally.
Yes, I was too, because, as I was starting to work on this energy chapter, I was really curious how many people are looking for an inward experience of something that has deeper meaning and fulfillment. And so when I read that 64% um, of people were searching for deeper meaning and a spiritual connection, I was very excited to hear that. The other part of the research that's not in the book is that people don't know where to get it. Not everyone feels, there are still a lot of people that feel comfortable going to church, but there is a much broader audience now that does does not even really want a religious undertone to their life. And so there's a lot of people searching and not finding an answer. And so I think it's also really important to know that if you're listening to this, you're not alone. 64% of people are searching for deeper meaning. So find your community. It doesn't have to be religious. It could be in books and in book clubs or in, networking circles. But you can find spaces where there is a spiritual undertone to it and that you can you can get there on your own too, just by doing deeper reflection and some of the things that we're talking about. But know that, part of the message in a return to radiance is that we are spiritual beings living in a human existence, and we are also human beings that are spiritual beings. So there's this duality in life that happens. And so if you find yourself wanting deeper reflection, just go in and do it, because there's a part of you that is longing for you to go inward.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love how in your book you talk about the 10 bodies. I did not even look at it that way. I'd love for you to kind of break that down for us just quickly, and how people can view, because when we look at it that way, we look at our body differently.
Yeah. So I had mentioned that I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher, and in Kundalini yoga, the foundation of it is it's also referenced to as the yoga of self-awareness. So you've heard me say self-awareness quite a lot, and it really is the key to your soul is going inward. But in Kundalini yoga, we have 10 bodies. So we have a soul body, a negative mind, positive mind, a neutral mind. You can see, I spend so much time talking about mindset, and just, 4 of 10, or three of these of 10 are mindset, our mind. So you can see how powerful our mind is in the concept of our overall making. The other bodies are our physical body. We have a arc line, which is that tight line around our body. We have our aura, which people are pretty familiar with our aura. We have our pranic body, which is our life force energy. And this is that when our life force energy is high, where we have high vitality. When it's low, we can be sick or very immobile. We have our subtle body, which is, I like to explain it as if somebody walked into a room, their subtle energy is the thing that you pick up on, whether, you're like, oh, that person lights up a room, or like somebody, or they walk in and you're like, oh, probably should stay away from that person. You don't know why you're saying that, but that would be somebody's subtle energy. And then you have the final expression. So I'm happy that you brought this up too. And it's one of the things that made me have like an aha as far as why a return to radiance is so important. In the Kundalini yoga teachings, the radiant body is the 10th body, and that is the final expression or the highest expression that we can get to in this human experience, is to live in our radiant body, which is the full expression of our potential and everything we came here to be.
What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from a return to radiance?
I would like readers and listeners to know that returning to your radiance is so important. There is a part inside you. You have gifts, talents, and strengths that were meant to be used. And that when you come back to the truth of who you are, not only does your life change for the better, but the impact you make in your personal world and in the world, to like multiply tenfold. And if you're a person that is wanting more fulfillment in life and to make a greater impact while you're alive on this earth, then returning to your radiance is a must.
Well, Becca, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Great question. So very easy to find me. You can find me at beccapowers.com. And then socially, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram the most, and that's at Becca Powers 1313. But that same handle can be found on Facebook.
Well, Becca, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Yes, Marianne, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Becca. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, A Return to Radiance: The Power Method to Ignite Your Soul and Unleash Your Potential. A Return to Radiance is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. You can also order this book directly from the publisher, New World Library, at newworldlibrary.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.